If there's one game that Resident Evil superfans need to give thanks to, it's Resident Evil 6. Let me explain. Resident Evil 6 to some is a failure, and they're not too far off. But there's a fine line between a game that flat out bombs and a game that sends a strong message back to its developer. The message being, we deserve better. Resident Evil 6 was the game that sent Capcom back to the drawing board. It was time for a reinvention of the series, one that hadn't been seen since Resident Evil 4. The very series that helped create the survival horror genre was sadly drifting away from its namesake. Horror was no longer prevalent, and the survival aspect was on par with any other third-person shooter you could buy on the market. For almost 3 years, fans were completely left in the dark about what to expect from the series. That is, until the summer of 2016, when Capcom dropped what was then known as the Kitchen Demo, later revealed to be a teaser for the eventual Resident Evil 7, and fans went nuts. A new Resident Evil game, only playable in the first person, with a new story and a new protagonist? Sounds like a gamble to me, but it was a bet that more than paid off. The switch to first person was a little controversial at the time, as some saw it as a direct response to, you remember, that one time when Silent Hills was meant to go first person? You know, back when Konami actually valued creativity. But anyway, Capcom stepped up and admitted that the game was far into development before PT even launched. And it's also worth mentioning that the original PlayStation Resident Evil was originally developed as a Doom-style first-person horror game. All that aside, Resident Evil 7 was a breath of fresh air. It was just the kind of rebirth the series needed. The focus on scaring the player was brought back tenfold, but it's the return to form that makes this horror worth surviving. There are no stores here, no status upgrades, and no weapon upgrades. Whatever you find in and around the Baker Mansion is all you're getting, so use it wisely. It's very much in line with the first Resident Evil, and that you're dropped into an impossible situation and it's just you and your survival skills against a mansion of horrors. And like the original, your inventory is limited, so item management and proper planning is the name of the game. There's not as many keys to collect and puzzles to solve, but hey, I'm not complaining. Those original puzzles were a pain in the ass. Item boxes do make a return, but with an ever-expanding inventory, it becomes less of a nuisance over time. The story is its own brand of completely new and strangely familiar, which is what a good sequel should always strive to be. But oddly enough, there are very few ties to the established Resident Evil universe. So few that, at times, I thought I was playing a reboot or a side story. And in many ways, that's the mark of a great sequel and a great game. It was the game that saved Resident Evil and brought horror back to the masses. While everyone was enjoying Resident Evil 7, Capcom was hard at work on their next Resident Evil game. But this wasn't Resident Evil 8, oh no. This was something even more classic and even more beloved.
What the?
The Resident Evil 2 Remake was a game that had a lot to live up to. Fans had already spent over a decade pleading with the big C for one. Fun fact, a remake was actually on the table back in the early 2000s, but was scrapped because of Resident Evil 4's long, strenuous development cycle. It wasn't until late 2015 that Capcom announced that, yes, an official Resident Evil 2 remake was in the works, and just like always, the fans went berserk. We couldn't wait to find out more. The secrecy that went along with making this game is award-winning. Capcom did everything in their power to keep it under lock and key. For almost 3 years, we got next to nothing. No gameplay, no teasers, no character models, no story details, nothing. It was maddening. That is until E3 2018 when the first trailer dropped. The game promised a return to form for the series. Aside from the graphics overhaul, many of the game's mechanics, puzzles, and environments were completely reworked. Running on the same RE engine that powered 7, Resident Evil 2 is a gorgeous game to watch and play. The environments and lighting have a level of detail and fright that's been missing from the medium for so long. The new flashlight mechanic is a great way of ramping up the tension and claustrophobia that only a Resident Evil game can deliver. In fact, I'd like to go on a limb and say that the flashlight in this game was very much inspired by the Resident Evil 4 Hookman prototype. A great deal of change was added to the game's puzzles and backtracking. Much like Resident Evil 7, the puzzles are few and far between, with a much greater emphasis being put on the survival aspect. You can still craft bullets from gunpowder and mix herbs. Item management is still crucial, but this time, Capcom made the series' mainstay a little less frustrating. Yes, you still have to make room for key items, but this time, once an item has exhausted its use, you have the option to dispose of it right then and there. This makes managing your inventory so much easier. It also means you aren't having to constantly find an item box every 5 minutes to swap things out. Weapon upgrades and hidden rewards are still out there in the wild, if you're sharp enough to find them. The gunplay is still as satisfying as ever, with just a few tweaks to the overall combat system. Getting caught off guard by a random zombie and struggling to get him off you was always one of the worst parts of Resident Evil. This time, it's no big deal if you've got a trusty combat knife or a good old-fashioned grenade by your side. Like I said at the top of this video, the Resident Evil series was essentially one bad game away from being truly dead to the fans. A renaissance was inevitable if the series was going to have any chance of surviving. And if these two titles have proven anything, it's that Capcom is still an industry leader in creativity and game design. Capcom did not have to go the extra mile with either of these games. They could have sold the rights and let an entirely new team continue their legacy. But they didn't. They believed in their craft and saw the potential for a new age of Resident Evil. And you know what? They didn't disappoint. And from what it looks like, things can only go up from here. I don't know what the future of Resident Evil holds, or what the next game will be about, or even what it will be called. But I can guarantee you this. Regardless of whatever it is, I'll be the first in line to get my copy of it. Thanks for watching my video, guys, and please subscribe and stay put, because I got more videos coming on the way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.